Hello.
Hello, Jonathan. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is Antoinette Tuff. I'm sorry I was on another line running a little late.
No problem, Antoinette. Hello, by the way.
Okay, go ahead, Jonathan. We're fine.
Wonderful, and thank you so much. As I'm just amazed and thankful for you to reach back out to me for this interview, I wanted to start with us talking a bit on the topic of resilience. But if I could, I actually have a first question that we might just keep coming back to this topic of resilience, but I just want you to know that that's kind of like a big topic that I want to have as a bit of a theme as I'm writing about you, and really as I've written on school violence for a number of years now, and so it's very surprising to finally be touching base with you. Do you know? I don't mean to sound like I'm any big person. I'm not, but do you know the reason that I got into school violence prevention?
Why did you get into it?
Okay, and again, this isn't to interview me, but just good that we both know each other. Actually, in 2012, there was a school shooting in Colorado, and I work at the state level, and I just was really troubled by it. And I don't work in Colorado, but I was really troubled and thought, why haven't educators come up with solutions? And that very question in my heart launched me onto a writing process, and I wrote a book on how to prevent school shootings through strengths-based nurturing with students at all stages of internal pain that they might feel, not just at the final moment, which definitely is what you've experienced. So just with that little background, but I wanted to ask you a first question. I know that oftentimes people who lash out in pain, that comes from pain that's already inside them. And so whether it's the most negative action that can be possibly conceived, in other words, a school shooting or something worse, or whether it's even just interpersonal relationships, people often act out of pain that's already internal to them. I'm curious what you think on this quote that hurt people hurt people.
Well, my thing is that the main topic is that at that particular moment, I was hurt. I had tried to commit suicide myself a couple of days before the gunman came into the school. Mm-hmm. And so with that, pain met pain. So yes, even though sometimes hurt people hurt people, and I understand that quote, but on the backside of that, pain meets pain too. So it depends upon where you're at in your hurt situation. So for me, even though the gunman came into the school, I was already wounded because my husband had left me after 33 years. And I didn't know how to survive without him. And so I found myself at 46 back to that same little girl who was 13 leaving her mom's house. So when you say pain, you got to really look at that pain because everybody deals with pain differently. And does that pain have to go back and touch someone else's life? And then how is it going to touch someone else's life? Is it going to touch it in a negative way or a positive way?
Yeah.
The gunman when he came to my school, he passed several schools to get to my school.
So it's a good thing that he came to the school you were at, because
he parked his car right beside my car. So when you look at that was nothing but God saving us both. You can call it your higher power, God.
No, you don't need to worry. I'm a Christian as well. So
so it becomes God saving us both.
Yeah, I was just thinking, someone could say that God sent you to that school, long before you knew it, so that you would be there that day. But maybe also we could say that God sent that young man to your school. In other words,
because he
brought you both together.
I saved him.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I was in a devastating moment myself, so it was really pain, looking at pain in the mirror.
Yeah, and like you said, being willing to use it for positive.
Right. So now with that, Yes, I could have said, oh, yes, the gunman came in and this and that and the other. But what I'm doing is now, how do I go back and take that same pain to reach the next generation?
Mm-hmm. And like you said, we're always feeling pain in life. That's not something we can escape, nor would we want to, because it helps us grow.
Right.
So the question is, what are we doing with it?
Right. So you're going to have trials and tribulations no matter what you look at, no matter how you look at it. Mm-hmm. It's just at the end of the day, am I going to use what was meant for evil for my good? Mm-hmm. Because God always turns it around. It's just how am I going to turn it around? Mm-hmm. And am I going to turn it around? Or am I going to sit there and say, oh, well, why it's me? Mm-hmm. And we all have the opportunity to do that. Some of us get out of it, and some of us don't. It's just all about a decision. But it takes some of us longer. But what we have to realize is that no matter how long it takes you, whether you get out of it in a month, whether you get out of it in a year, it may be 4 or 5 years down the line when you can really say to yourself that I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But no matter what the timing is, the whole thing about it is, can you get out of it? Mm-hmm. And are you willing to get out of it?
Sure. I think a lot of us don't really think that years and even decades could go on without things that we want in our life taken care of, I guess, being responded to. But it happens the world over that people wait and think about things and struggle with things for decades. And yet, like you're saying, they can deal with things, they can accept things. Pain's certainly not something we want to run from. Pain's something that we want to accept and, like you said, kind of have our shoes on, being willing to see that it might just be bringing the right situation to bring resolution. Rather than us thinking we have to fight it, maybe it's actually going to bring something that's even better.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if my husband had not left me, okay, just say he didn't leave me, mm-hmm. and the gunman came into the school, mm-hmm. no telling what have happened, because I was, me and my husband was best friends. Sure. We had been married for 33 years. My kids was grown. We had just went on a date the weekend before, mm-hmm. All of that, before he left. So it was like, I just didn't see him throwing me the curveball to tell me that he was leaving. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it. It blindsided me. Mm-hmm. But God knew that I needed that shaking when I got it, mm-hmm. because that shaking was the shaking that had me into the suicide moments, that had me wanting to kill myself, that had me want to walk out in front of a car and say, okay, I can't take it. Mm-hmm. Those moments were the moments that allowed me to see when people say, I got low in my life. I didn't get that. But now that I have lived it and got a testimony in it, I can now relate to it. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't have been able to relate to that gunman if I had not gone through what I was going through at the moment. Mm-hmm.
I think
I would have just been like, okay, we'd have probably all been dead. I'd have been like, okay, whatever, baby. Okay.
You're right. I don't know how many folks can appreciate this. I'll try to explain something that I actually have thought about for a couple decades. So let me put it in simple terms. I think that there's a scale, kind of like a spectrum, from 0 to 100, a scale of hardships that people can experience. So that if you think about it, some people have not experienced or don't experience or have avoided a lot of hardships. I don't believe that there's many folks on that side, but just let's for theory suppose that there are folks on the lighter side. There are folks who are on the heavier side of hardship, but here's the lesson. On that scale, from whatever number is the lowest to whatever number is the highest, every human being is on that scale. We all, if you created it into a number that measured us, we all have an amount of hardship we faced. And I found in my experience, and this is my second question for you, I found in my experience that it is so much easier for me to relate to someone who has a similar level of hardships. It's like I can speak without words. It's like they just get it. And when they're speaking to me, they don't need to use words. I just get it. So what do you think about a hardship scale? And I wish I could explain it better. I've not really ever publicly talked much about it. But
Well,
what are your thoughts?
well, my thing is, I think that we all have a level of pain, a level of tragedies that we go through.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they're there to make us better.
Mm-hmm.
That no matter what you go through,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's going to make you wiser, stronger,
Yep.
and then it's going to give you the wisdom that you need to walk into your destiny.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you 100%.
And without it, and without that scale, and if things was always good for you, and you never had to go through that 1 ounce of pain, how do I now know how to tell my brother or my sister that everything is going to be all right when they're in pain if I've never experienced pain?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we all have to have our own level, and I think God gives us a level that we can bear. I don't think He puts more on your plate than you can bear, and all of our levels of what we can bear is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think He gives us the levels of what we can bear in order for us now to take that level to give it to the next person, so that person can increase their level to give it to the next person.
Yeah. Let me, for a second, Antoinette, put this in terms for folks that might not have a faith relationship or might just be listening but trying to find words in their own experience that relate. I remember years and years ago, and this here I am trying to say, I'll give an example for folks without faith. But years and years ago when I was young, I prayed and asked God for help in something. I was a beginning teacher. And I'll tell you, after I prayed that, things were the hardest they'd ever been. And I actually even thought back on prayer and thought, I better not pray like that again. But I guess what I want to come back to for folks that might be newer in exercising their gears of faith is just that this idea that life's going to work out. People have hardship in their life. I'm talking right now to a friend whose brother's in prison, and all of a sudden I'm learning about good things that are going on there. Just like you're saying, hope can be found. And I think the place that hope doesn't exist is in our mind sometimes. In other words, hope's ready to happen, but hope isn't always something that we're thinking on. And I think you've engaged with the process of hope and the process of finding it. And I want to come back to pain, though. This whole idea that painful experiences in our life can turn out to be good things. Let's just go to a simple illustration from nature. And again, I'm not trying to be pluralistic here, but if you think about the bird that doesn't know how to fly, and the parent bird, this usually happens with eagles, I think, but the parent starts taking apart the nest and starts getting more and more uncomfortable to be living in that nest until there's all of a sudden a time where the baby's holding on to one twig and holding on to another twig, and the parent bird is saying, okay, well, there's only 2 twigs left and I'm taking one of them. And what happens is the baby bird learns how to fly by living in an uncomfortable nest until they finally leave. So I think pain, in a similar way, and that's a simple illustration only meant for that purpose, but pain is really something that can bring out good qualities in us that haven't yet been tested. And so I want to. Here's my third question, and I know you're busy and have other things going on. So this will be my last question, and I'll also just be honored to hear other thoughts you have too. But I had a similar experience to you, not involving school shooting, but involving changing the lives of a number of people forever. And it happened with a World War II veteran, and I've written on it on the Huffington Post, so I won't talk on it here. But I just want to go back to that day where this amazing thing happened. And for me, it wasn't a tragedy. For me, it was more of providing assistance to someone. But when I look back on that day, I'm struck by my emotions. I didn't want to be there at the time. I didn't have any insight or forethought that there'd be a good thing happening. And above all, I not only didn't expect it, I didn't really even want it to happen. But I don't mean to make myself sound so negative. I also didn't really, it was a pretty normal day, a pretty plain day. And I want to just ask you what you think. Isn't life filled with plain days? And again, I'm not saying that there aren't huge days where the most amazing thing happens, but we're always just living in the moment. And we need to learn how to do that better so that when an amazing day comes where we're going to make a difference, we're ready to.
Well, I mean, for me, I was living in an amazing day. I mean, I had been married. I was with my best friend. My kids was grown. I was okay with where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing about it is that everybody says, okay, you're a hero, but that American hero came at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
So people look at the glory, they see you on TV and they see all that, but there's a story behind that. And so when you're looking at that and when you're looking at things that goes on in your life, you have to always ask yourself, are you ready for the story in order to get the glory?
Amen.
Because you can't get one without the other. And so for me, I was okay fixing my food and fixing breakfast, lunch, and dinner for my family every day, 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, and then go work my 3 jobs and do all that. And with my husband, he was my best friend. I was okay with my life. But what made it not okay was that God said, I have a greater purpose for you. Mm-hmm. And I need you to beckon to the calling. And so it wasn't that I wanted to go to the calling. I was beckoning to the calling. Mm-hmm. So when God calls you or when you're chosen, it's not that you want to do it. It's just, are you going to listen when your number is called? Because we all have an assignment. You can call it a purpose. You can call it a destiny. However you want to call it, we all got a number. And just as sure as we're living, we're going to go home one day, and whatever that home is for you.
You're right.
But at the end of the day, are you going to be able to have the report where God will say, well done, my good and faithful servant? Mm-hmm. And for me, even though he called my name that day and all that was going on, because I was in the state that I was in, I had a more intimate relationship with him, and I knew what that meant, so I understood his voice. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. Before, I went to church and did all that, but I was so geared on what my kids need, what my husband needs, what everyday regular life meant for me. I could not always determine the voice of God and what that meant for me. So when the gunman came into the school looking just like my children, only 20 years old, with that AK-47 and over 500 rounds of ammunition on his back, ready to steal, kill, and destroy, I knew then that it was beyond my control of what I could do when I looked in that young man's eyes. Mm-hmm. It was beyond my control of what I could say to him that was going to make us all survive, including him. Mm-hmm. I had to go back to my God and say, God, do you see what I see? What every word that proceeds out of my mouth right now is life or death, not just for me, but for over 870 students, teachers, and parents in this building. Mm. And for me, that time of the day was the busiest time. On a normal day, that office would have been filled with parents, teachers, and students for early dismissal. Mm-hmm. But God, in his sovereignty, did not allow one student, one teacher, or one parent to come to that office or ring that bell for early dismissal. Mm-hmm. So what we have to go back and look at is that when you're called, it doesn't always feel good. But in the midst of it, are you going to listen to it? And so even for me right now today, after all that has transpired, it still doesn't feel good. But I'm still having to listen to the call. Because God said to me, even though the gunman has came in, your husband has left, I need you now to go back and make a difference in my next generation. And so I started from Anderson Cooper, I started my nonprofit organization called Kids on the Move for Success, where we give out scholarships to kids from pre-K to college and international students and graduates. So I wanted to immediately go back and say, how can I start making a difference? I do my professional speaking where I go and speak to children. I speak to women groups. I speak to businesses. I speak to organizations. And we go back and do presentations to make a difference. So, yes, out of all of that, how do you go back and say, I'm going to make a difference? So now what they're allowing me to do is go back to the same school district where the gunman held me hostage and have my own one-on-one mentoring program with 3rd and 4th graders.
That's awesome.
So, so all of it is not fair, and it doesn't feel good. But in the midst of it, all you're going to listen to the call, and all you're going to continuously go forward and move forward and push past your pain, no matter how bad and how unbearable your pain may feel at the moment, knowing that every moment is subject to change.
So
it's all a calling.
It is a calling, and I think the message for all of us is that we need to make a difference in our life, in our family, in our culture, in our country, even in our world, that we need to make a difference.
Yeah. Who are you going back? See, me, they call me the fire snatcher. So who are you going to snatch out of the fire? Because a lot of us are drowning on a daily basis. Some of us are drowning moment by moment. And it doesn't mean a physical drowning in the water. We're drowning in sorrow. We're drowning in divorce. We're drowning in marriages not working. We're drowning in kids being bullied. We're drowning in businesses failing. We're drowning in losing our jobs. The list goes on. But at the end of the day, who are you going to say, I'm going to go back and snatch them out the fire to allow them to know that life is worth living for? That's where we make a difference.
That's right. And for folks that are coming from faith traditions, even just praying for people that you're bringing up here, that you're mentioning, that's something that we can do. But I found, and I think that you found in your testimony is the example of this, prayer is not enough. We've got to be willing to put action to our words if God brings that moment.
Yeah, you got to put some leg work to it.
That's right.
We can talk all day long, but faith without works is dead. And so if you ain't working and doing nothing, it's dead. You can't bring life into something that's already dead if you're not doing nothing about it.
That's right.
And so we have to go back and say, how are we going to allow our kids and even adults? You got adults right now wanting to commit suicide. You got adults right now thinking, okay, how am I going to pay my electric bill? How am I going to get my child the next school, the next pair of shoes? Christmas is here, holiday season. You got mothers now trying to figure out how are they going to make ends meet and give their child one toy. Not 50, one. And not have to take their bill money to be able to do it. So how are we going to be able to go back and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to make a difference? And yeah, we go back and we may go and say, okay, I'm going to donate to this one and give to them and so they can give out toys. I'm going to go and do this and give out toys. But some mothers, I don't need a toy. I need to know if you can help me pay my rent. I had a mother to call me today who was a parent at my old school, at one of my schools that I was at, and she asked me today, I need a roof over my head. I need to figure out where am I going to live at. So we got things that are going on with people every day, and mind you, I'm not even there, and she calls me from another state. But because she knows my integrity and my character, she says, I knew that if I called you, if you couldn't do anything, I knew that you would at least pray and ask God to give me direction on what I need to do.
Your words strike to the core.
We got to go back and figure out how we're going. People are in need. So how are we we going to do that? How are we going to let this next generation coming up to be able to know, okay, it's all right?
Well, I think there's in every generation struggle, but in every generation, just like you said, Antoinette, there's need. There's great need. And so the question is, what are we all going to do? And we need to, as you've said, we need to make a difference.
We do. And everything now, kids are posting on social media. They're posting everywhere. You got kids now killing themselves off of posting on social media from people they have never seen in their entire lives. Mm-hmm. How are we going to be able to allow our kids to know that God validates you first and you are worth it? You're worth it, no matter what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And whatever they say to you on Facebook or social media, whatever the case may be, on these on the website, it doesn't validate and it doesn't dictate who you are. But we got our kids now that just don't see hope. Because Mary or Jane over here, who's in another state, don't even know your last name, said something about you. And they have now internalized that to now say to themselves that this is who I am. We have to make a difference in our next generation. That's just it.
Yeah. So what's a message for, I mean, lots of school leaders are struggling with social media and students' use of social media. There's district reactions are anything from banning all use of social media to regulating what kids write and all these kinds of things. But you bring a very, very true point that kids can feel threat and intimidation and humiliation because of words on a computer or a phone screen. And those feelings can lead them to do terrible things. What advice do you have for schools and for that matter for kids with social media? I agree that it's a gigantic problem in this generation.
Well, one thing I would say is, when you were coming up, your parents used to always say, "Do as I say, don't do as I do." Mm-hmm. Well, that phrase doesn't work anymore because kids are now doing what they see you do, not what you say. Mm-hmm. And we as parents and adults have to live by example. Because I can't go back and say to Mary, don't use your phone, and then Mary's sitting at her desk doing work, and Mary sees me sitting at my desk in the midst of the interim. I got a little break, and I'm over here trying to see what's on my social media. I can't go back and tell Mary not to get on hers when she sees me doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So what we have to do as adults is lead by example. Mm-hmm. And as you do that, then I think that the actual integrity and the character and the respect will be there. But some of us don't do that. I mean, we want our kids and our students and all of that to be our friends, but they're not. They won't ever be. My daughter is 30 and my son is 25. And I still allow them to know that I'm the mother and they're the children. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain level of respect. There's a certain level where you're going to talk to me. There's a certain level where you're going to respond. And I don't even care if it's in a text message. Don't let your tone and your disrespectfulness come through on the text. And I think that's where we get it mixed up as parents and as adults, is that they come, they text us things that are crazy, they say things crazy out their mouths, and what we do is we're like, they're just kids. Oh, it's okay, Susie, don't do that. John, don't do that. You're going to get in time out. No. You got to go back and be able to say that this is what I expect you to do. These are the rules. These are the consequences if you don't. And this is what I expect for you to do. Mm-hmm. And we don't do that.
That's true. So integrity is a big piece. Also, when threats or when negative things happen on social media, there's a few responses kids can have. One is they need to share with adults that are trustworthy adults, and number two, which is I'd almost say impossible at times, but we really need to train kids that life is a process, not a moment. Because kids go through moments and think this is the hardest thing that's ever happened to me. Well, it might be now, but you'll, as you said earlier in our interview, you'll get over it, you'll get through it. And yet, when we're younger, we always view things from a perspective of it's the biggest moment and it's the only moment. So when negative things happen on social media, it can bring up that same feeling in kids that it's the worst thing to happen. But we need to find reasonable ways to respond positively. It's difficult territory.
That comes to us as adults. Mm-hmm. That comes to us as adults is showing them and teaching them how. Mm-hmm. You know, you probably remember your mother and them say that it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. Not a family, but a child. And so we have to get back to that mentality. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, the village that raised us made us the men and women that we are today. So, yes, we did certain things, but we didn't post it on social media. Mm-hmm. We didn't do all that. Why? Because we had the fear of our parents, the fear of God, mm-hmm. and the fear of the consequences that we were going to get if we did it. Yeah. And for kids now, that fear is no longer there. So what you have to wind up doing is say, you don't want to go and just tear them down. I think there's a way that you do fear and do it with integrity and respect, but there still has to be a level of fear. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think
but you have to have loving of fear. See, what made the gunman and me and him connect mm-hmm. was that even though I was fearful, he was able to see the level of respect that I had for him.
Mm-hmm. And coming back to that from a community point of view, we really need to grow in our communities a level of respect for each other and even for folks we don't know. But just coming back to that thing, if we see someone doing something wrong, we need to think, how can I help prevent that? How can I help that person? I always use this illustration in a men's group that I co-lead. It's whenever you're driving by and you see all the cops either pulling someone over or there's an accident or something, think in your heart, how to pray for that person. And even pray for the folks who are there trying to sort something out. In other words, don't just drive by and be passive. We can't enter into every situation, but we can, by prayer and by having a caring heart, we can actually enter into every situation. Well, anyway, Antoinette, I think we've had a wonderful time to talk today. I'm so thankful for all the work that you're doing, and as I get this interview taken care of and the article finished, I'm just so thankful for your help today and the work that you're doing.
You are so welcome, and even to send over a copy to us and all that, so that way that they can be able to have it on file too.
Okay, thank you so much, and have a great day.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend. Happy holidays to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.